Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, inshallah, we will move to new voices. In the previous two videos, we talked about the war poets, World War One poets. We talked about four actually poets who we saw that they were shifting in their reactions towards towards the war, from being just patriotic and wanted to defend Britain to actually focus on the hardship that the soldiers suffer from on the front lines, and then moving to feeling sympathetic with those soldiers, and later starting to criticize the generals and the leaders of the war who actually with their decisions led to the massacre of or the killing of thousands of millions actually of people, including the British soldiers. Today, inshallah, we will move to new voices. We will read for Winston Auden, and then we will go to the poems of T.S. Eliot, and we will start with the wasteland that will have another part in the next video, inshallah. Okay, so let's start with the new voices. The period now after the war, it was a period of disillusionment. Now people suffered from depression and unemployment, of course, because of the destruction of the country after the war. Now men's ideas were profoundly shaken. The war had undermined both regional and class distinctions, and the belief in the ideals of progress and rationality had already been rejected as outworn 18th century faiths. But what sort of human condition to substitute for them was not easily agreed upon. So after the war, the people suffered a lot at the spiritual, actually the emotional, the psychological, and of course the social level and the political level. So they started to disbelieve in the previous actually values and norms that people in the 18th century and the 19th century believed in. And now people wanted new things to look at, new actually ways to follow in their life in order to surpass or overcome the tragedy of the war. But at this stage, they couldn't know what way to go through. Now, the post-war years saw the emergence of two totalitarian ideologies, notably communism, اللي هي الشيوعية, and fascism, of which one kind is Nazism, none of which were able to replace the deposed ideals. Okay, so you would find that after the war, they actually came up with the idea of communism, اللي هو الفكر الشيوعي الماركسي, of fascism, and from fascism came Nazism, and all of them couldn't replace or convince people that those are the model ideals or the ideals that they need to follow. So although in the 1930s the majority of young intellectuals inclined to the political left, اللي هو اليسار, جناح اليسار بعكس اليمين, which seemed to be the only one to offer any solutions, they were soon undeceived when Russia signed a pact with Germany, which led to the outbreak of Second World War in September 1939. So the idea here is that after World War I, people started to disbelieved in all the norms, all the ideals or the values that were actually prevailing in the country, and they wanted something new. So the idealistics of the communism and the ideas of communism, اللي هي الشيوعية, and the people as long as totalitarian, so the people should control all the people, or the people rule the people, اللي هو حكم الشعب للشعب. So however, after a while, they found that Russia actually betrayed their ideas about peace and about the possibility that they live together, all the people around the world, in Europe and around the world. They are equal and they deserve equal opportunities to be in this life. So they discovered suddenly Russia signed an agreement with Germany. And after signing this agreement, what happened? The outbreak of the Second World War in September 1939, which again led to the death of millions of people. Now, the literary scene was also undergoing change, a reaction against romantic fuzziness and facile emotionalism in poetry had brought on the Imagist movement. Of course, it comes from the word image. In 1912, influenced by T.E. Hume, insistence on hard, clear, precise images, and encouraged by Ezra Pound. So now the poets, okay, and the intellectuals, they wanted to focus on the clear description of the image in front of them. So they don't want any of the metaphors or the images of the romantic period, which focused on actually like imaginative things and creating an imaginative world away from the reality. So now they focused on the hard, clear, precise image, and that was encouraged by Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound is a very famous, actually, poet in the 20th century. He lived for a while in Britain, but he is actually an American poet. Now we will come to one of the new voices, whose name is W H Auden. He is an English poet, playwright, critic, and libertist. He exerted a major influence on the poetry of the 20th century. He grew in Birmingham, okay, and he was known for his extraordinary intellect and wit, okay. His first book or poems was published in 1930 with the help of T.S. Eliot just before World War II broke out. Auden immigrated to the United States, where he met the poet Chester Kallman, who became his lifelong lover. Now, Auden won the Pulitzer Prize, this is in literature, okay, in 1948 for The Age of Anxiety. This is one of his works, okay, The Age of Anxiety, okay. Much of his poetry is concerned with moral issues and evidences a strong political, social, and psychological context. While the teachings of Marx, you remember communism اللي هو الشيوعي, and Freud, who was a psychologist واللي معروف عن فكرته عن العقل اللاواعي عنا, weighed heavily in his early work. They later gave way to religious and spiritual influences. Some critics have called Auden an anti-romantic, a poet of analytical clarity who sought for order, for universal patterns of a human existence. So Auden's poetry is considered versatile and inventive. It was different from the normal poetry. Okay, this is a background that you can go through about his work. So I will move to the work that he we will focus on today. Okay, the work that we will focus on today for W H Auden, his name is abbreviated like this, is Musée des Beaux-Arts. Okay, Musée des Beaux-Arts. In December 1938, of course, these words are not English words, okay? Following a visit to the Musées Royaux de Beaux-Arts de Belgium, okay, or the Royal Museums of Fine Arts of Belgium. So this poem, okay, the title of the poem is the name of the Museum of Fine Arts in Belgium, okay. The poem's speaker walks through a gallery contemplating various paintings and admiring their ability to convey the human position towards suffering that is indifference. Okay, the poem is an example of ekphrasis, okay, which means description, a vivid description of a scene, or more commonly a work of art. So here he will be walking in the gallery, okay, looking at paintings that were painted long time ago, in the 18th century maybe, okay. He thought that the painters or the artists who painted those actually paintings were excellent, okay, in conveying the human position towards suffering. They showed how people suffered through their life. Okay, in which the speaker coolly describes the paintings, calling attention to figures carrying on with their lives in the face of extreme violence. Okay, so he will focus here on the idea of suffering, and that suffering is an inevitable thing in our life. All people suffer, so the norm in our life, the normal thing in our life is suffering. Okay. Now, shortly before his 1938 trip to Brussels, Auden spent 6 months in China during the Second Sino-Japanese War and several weeks at the front line of the Spanish Civil War. As such, this poem can also be seen as a reaction to the bloodshed that the young poet witnessed during his travels, which he wrote about extensively. So it seems that our poet Auden, he actually witnessed killing people in wars in several places, and when he visited Belgium and went to that museum, he was looking at the paintings which were painted through history, and all of them were focusing on the suffering of the people, the killing, the humiliation, the death of many people. So, and how the other people never, don't care. The people just continue living their life despite hearing about the misery and the tragedy of other people. Okay. So let's come to Musée des Beaux-Arts. This is the summary, but before we go to the summary, we can listen to the poem. So let me just go to the YouTube link.
By W H Auden. Musée des Beaux-Arts by W H Auden. About suffering, they were never wrong, the old masters. How well they understood its human position, how it takes place while someone else is eating or opening a window or just walking dully along. How, when the aged are reverently, passionately waiting for the miraculous birth, there always must be children who did not specially want it to happen, skating on a pond at the edge of the wood. They never forgot that even the dreadful martyrdom must run its course. Anyhow, in a corner, some untidy spot, where the dogs go on with their doggy life, and the torturer's horse scratches its innocent behind on a tree. In Bruegel Zacchaeus, for instance, how everything turns away, quite leisurely from the disaster. The ploughman may have heard the splash, the forsaken cry, but for him it was not an important failure. The sun shone, as it had to, on the white legs disappearing into the green water, and the expensive, delicate ship that must have seen something amazing, a boy falling out of the sky, had somewhere to get to, and sailed calmly on.
So So I hope you enjoyed listening to the poem. So this is the poem. We can look at it. Say, Depose arts about suffering. They were never wrong. So who they refer to here? The painters, okay? He said the old masters, but actually he is talking about the painters who painted the pictures. In the YouTube video, you saw a picture. We will come to that picture, okay? The old masters, how will they understood? It's a human position, how it takes place. So they understood the position of people in this world, that all people suffer in this world, while someone else is eating or opening a window or just walking dully along. So while in some place in the world, some people are suffering and dying, other people in the other part of the world or around them are just eating, opening a window, or just walking dully along. So never care about the suffering of the other people. How? When the aged are reverently, passionately waiting for the miraculous birth. Here he's referring to the birth of Jesus, and those aged are the churchmen or the religious men who were waiting for the birth of Jesus. There always must be children who didn't especially want it to happen. So around the world there were children who never cared about the birth of Jesus, skating on a pond at the edge of the wood. So they were unaware of the suffering of the Virgin or mother of Jesus while she was suffering to give birth to her baby. They didn't want that, and they didn't care about that. They were just playing and running at the edge of the wood. And there is another interpretation for the idea of the children. It's about referring, this is an allusion to King Herod. King Herod in the legend is said that he had a prophecy that one of the children who will be born will come and kill him when he grows up. So he decided to kill the children, all the born children, immediately after their birth, so as not to have that boy. So those children who came to this life didn't want that to happen. They never forgot that even the dreadful martyrdom must run its course. So here the martyrdom, here he's talking about the crucifixion of Jesus, of the Christ, okay, in order to save the humanity. Anyhow, in a corner, some untidy spot where the dogs go on with their doggy life, and the tortured horse scratches its innocent behind on a tree. So while they were crucifying the Christ, the dogs were actually living their life normally. They didn't care. And the horse of the torture, الشخص اللي كان بعذب فيه وبيحط فيه على الصليب، الحصان تاعه, it was unaware of the torture that was taking place, and it was just scratching its innocent back on a tree. So الحصان كان يعني مش واعي لعملية الصليب اللي بيتم وضع المسيح عليه. بالعكس كان هو innocent. He didn't know about what his owner was doing. Okay, in Bruegel's Icarus is another allusion to the legend of Icarus and his father is Daedalus. Now Daedalus, he was like an engineer, an architect, and he actually designed a maze, يعني صمم متاهة for a monster, but then he gave the map for someone else, so he betrayed the king, so he actually imprisoned him in that maze, he and his son Icarus. Now to escape from that maze, he made wings of feather and wax. عمل جناحين من الريش والشمع. الآن he gave his son 2 wings, and he took to himself 2 wings. Now he told his son not to fly high in the sky near the sun, so in fear that the sun will melt the wax and he will fall. And he told him, don't fly closer to the earth in case you hit something, or because they will be flying on the sea. So if he flew high in the sky, the sun will melt the wax. Now if he flew lower near the sea, the damp or the humidity coming out from the sea may make his feather unfit for flying. So what happened? Icarus, while flying, he was so happy for flying, so he flew high in the sky, so the sun melted the wax in his wings and he fell down and died. Now there is a painting for his falling that we are reading about now. So in Bruegel's Icarus, for instance, how everything turns away quite leisurely from the disaster. كل شيء كان حوالين المنطقة اللي سقط فيها إيكاروس كانت عادي، عايشين ولا كأنه في شيء. The blowman، الرجل اللي بيحرث في الأرض، may have heard the splash، يمكن سمع صوت الخبطة في المية. The forsaken cry، يمكن سمع صوت الصرخة لإيكاروس وهو بيوجع. But for him it was not an important failure. بالنسبة له يا شيخ ما كانتش مهمة، إيش يعني واحد وقع من السماء. The sun shone، حتى الشمس كانت مشرقة as it had to on the white legs disappearing into the green. يعني رغم أن الشمس مذنبة إلا إنها استمرت في الإشراق وكان ضوءها بينعكس على الرجلتين البيض اللي كانوا بيختفيوا في المياه الخضراء. Of course the green water because of the trees near the sea. And the expensive delicate ship، حتى كانت في سفينة تجارية مرة في المنطقة. That must have seen something amazing، لابد وأنها رأت شيئا رائع. شوف الإيروني. A boy falling out of the sky. Okay, so they said, wow, a boy is falling from the sky, and they didn't care. Nobody actually bothered himself to go and save that boy, but that ship had somewhere to get to and sailed calmly on. لأنه السفينة كان في إلها مكان بدها تروحوا ومش فاضيين نوقف ننقذ الولد اللي وقع من السماء. So this is actually a reflection of how some people are suffering and other people don't care about the suffering of those people. So people just continue living their life. Okay. Now, let's now come to the summary. I'll go quickly through the summary because I said that while reading the poem. Okay. So while pursuing a gallery filled with works by celebrated pre-19th century painters, the speaker notes that these artists accurately portray suffering, especially humankind's attitude towards the suffering of others. So what is the attitude of humankind toward the suffering of others? They don't care. The speaker expands on this idea by alluding to the census at Bethlehem, a painting by Flemish Renaissance artist Peter Bruegel the Elder, and remarking that suffering occurs while people go about their everyday lives. إذا بينما كانت مريم العذراء بتعاني من أجل ولادة طفلها، الحياة كانت حواليها والناس كانوا عايشين حياتهم بشكل عادي وغير مهتمين أو منتبهين لمعاناتها. Indeed, the speaker calls attention to people eating. في الرسمة يعني لو طلعنا في الرسم الآن حنشوفها إيش الناس التانيين هي بتعاني للولادة وهم people eating, someone opening a window، ناس بتاكل، واحد بيفتح الشباك، and others simply walking about، وناس بس ماشيين في الطريق. All while a pregnant Mary and Joseph arrive to register in the census. Okay. Now look at this picture. This is the picture, and this is the picture of Mary and her son Jesus, and these are the men, okay, those who care about actually the birth of the boy who is speaking at birth, okay, while other people are far away, never care about that. Okay, and this is the other picture that we will come to it now when we read the summary. This is the Christ, or Jesus and his companions. They are actually, as you can see, they are crucified, okay? So they are martyrs. You would notice that some people here, they are just going and walking. People are continuing their life as if there is nothing. Here they are talking, okay, while look here, this is another companion from the Christ, and he is getting killed by a soldier. These are the soldiers, while the others are not even paying attention to the suffering of the Christ, his companions, and those who are actually being tortured. Okay, and this is another actually painting that will be described. It's about killing. You can see the soldiers. Here are the soldiers who would come and kill all the people in this village. Okay. Fine. So the speaker noticed that while older individuals eagerly anticipate the birth of Christ, there will always be other younger people who are not particularly awaiting such an event, like the children in the painting who play games and skate on a pond by a wooded area. According to the speaker, the artists are mindful that violence is carried out in some secluded, chaotic area as life goes on around it. Here, the speaker references the massacre of innocents. This is the picture of the massacre of innocents. You would find that the soldiers are killing everyone, including the children, which pictures the killing of the first Christian martyrs. In this painting, animals indifferently carry on as the killing happens. Here also, if you look here, you would find that the animals like the horses, I saw a horse here. Okay, yeah, here is the horse. Okay, so the animals in the back maybe, okay, they just continue their life as normal, and they don't care about the killing that is happening in the area. Dogs doing dog-like things, and the horse of the one slaughterer innocently scratching its rear on a tree. إذن بينما بتم عملية قتل للمسيح وأصحابه وقتل أبرياء، الناس عايشين حياتهم بدون أي اهتمام. Okay, now this is the picture of the fall of Icarus. Okay, this is the blow man that we talked about, الرجل اللي بيحرث. This is a shepherd, and the shepherd is giving his back to the sea and taking care of his animals. And if you look, here is the ship that we talked about. Okay, and there are some ships here, and we can see the sun shining. You can notice the water is green because of the trees around the sea. And here, look here, can you see that? Okay, let me just make it bigger. Okay, oops. Now here are the two legs of Icarus. Okay, these are the legs of the Icarus, the white legs that will disappear in water. You can notice that these two legs are not important, though they refer to the tragedy of Icarus and the suffering of Icarus. What is more important? The man blowing and taking care of his land, the shepherd they are even bigger. You can notice that the pictures, their images are bigger. And the ship, well, this little boy nobody cares about. Okay, so as a specific example of this phenomenon, which phenomenon are we talking about? Indifference, اللامبالاة, the indifference of people towards the suffering of the others. The speaker points out yet another Bruegel painting, landscape with the fall of Icarus, this picture, okay? Noting that everything in the picture seems to disregard Icarus's violent death. ولا حدا مهتم في الصورة زي ما احنا شايفين بموتة إيكاروس الفظيعة. The farmer who drives a blow in the painting's foreground might have heard Icarus plunge into the water and cry out. We said he might have heard the splash, صوت المية, and the cry, according to the speaker, but the event is unimportant to him, as suns must do. The sun in the painting continues to shine. الرجل اللي بيحرط بكمل الحرث ولا مهتم بالصوت. الشموس كما هي الشموس عادتها، فالشمس الآن في الصورة مستمرة في الشروق. The speaker draws attention to its reflection in Icarus's pale legs as they descend into green water. وبالعكس شعاعها معكوس على رجليه وهو بيغرق في المية. The speaker concludes the poem with the image of a luxurious ship which must have witnessed Icarus falling from the sky but had a journey to make and therefore sailed onward placidly. Okay, now I will stop here and come back in the second part to talk about the themes of Mose Debussy art. Definitely you can guess the theme now.